Hello, my name is Michael Clarke. I'm the MD of de Havilland, the political intelligence business of Essential. Now, I'm sure you've heard of a thing called Brexit, and today I really wanted to answer 4 questions. What is Brexit? Why did it happen? Why does it matter? And what happens next? So firstly, what is Brexit? For that, I need to take you back to 1950. Europe was recovering from the aftermath of the Second World War. Food rationing was still taking place in the UK. And a number of European countries, West Germany, France, Italy, and a number of smaller Western European countries, decided to come together, and the idea being that integration would prevent a future war in Europe. It is these institutions that would eventually become the EU of 2019. Now, the UK joined these institutions in 1973, and 2 years later they held a referendum on their membership, and 67% of the UK electorate voted in favour of being a member. Since then, the powers of the EU have grown substantially to cover issues of trade, security, and home affairs, to name but a few. The economies of the EU have grown substantially. The EU now has a combined GDP of over $17 trillion and represents over 500 million people. It also now represents 28 member states. Brexit, or the British exit from the EU, is the decision of the UK electorate to leave the Union. So why did the UK vote to leave the EU? There's no simple answer to this question, but we can go back to 2013 when David Cameron made a pledge that should he win the next general election, there would be a referendum on an in-out option. Now, there's speculation that he didn't think he would actually win the next general election. However, he did, and the government duly held a referendum. This was held on the 23rd of June 2016, with all the main parties campaigning to remain within the EU. So it came as a surprise when 52% of the electorate voted to leave. The next day, following the referendum, the Prime Minister David Cameron resigned, and shortly afterwards a new Prime Minister, Theresa May, came into power. Then in March 2017, the UK informed the EU of its desire to leave, and straight away a clock started to tick. And it's been ticking down for the last 2 years. And in 3 weeks, or 21 days, the UK is scheduled to leave the EU with or without a deal. So why does this matter? Well, the UK is the 5th largest global economy. It represents over 66 million people, and it is one of the largest financial hubs in the world. It is also the case that over the last 40 years, international trade agreements have been signed by the EU, not by the UK. So when the UK leaves, it is not by default a member of those trade agreements. So any potential effect on the UK impacts all of us at Essential, regardless of which country we're in. So what happens next? Well, the UK and the EU have been trying to figure that out for the last 2 years. In November 2018, the UK and EU published their draft withdrawal agreement. This would allow the UK to leave on the 29th of March and enter a period of transition. This would allow the EU and UK to reach a future trading agreement, and also allow the UK to negotiate trade agreements with other countries around the world. So that withdrawal agreement required the approval of both the UK and the EU Parliament. In January 2019, the UK Parliament held a vote, and the government was defeated by 230 votes. That's the largest defeat of any sitting UK government. Now, there's a number of reasons of why MPs rejected the deal, but primarily it is around how Northern Ireland would be treated in the future. Since then, the UK and the EU have continued their negotiations. However, this has not resulted in any new agreement. So, next week is potentially the most important week in UK parliamentary history. On Tuesday, the 12th of March, the UK Parliament will again get to vote on that withdrawal agreement. And this time round, it's going to be a lot closer. And there's a couple of reasons why. First, a number of MPs are worried about leaving the EU with no deal. On the other side, We've got MPs who are worried about a potential extension to our leave date. And the best way to avoid this is to approve that withdrawal agreement. However, if on Tuesday MPs again reject the withdrawal agreement, they will get another vote on Wednesday. And this will be on the option of leaving the EU with no deal. Now, we expect MPs to reject that option. There is no majority within Parliament to leave the EU with no deal. If MPs do vote against a no deal option, they will then get another vote on Thursday. And this will be on the possibility of extending Article 50. Now, Article 50 is the 29th of March deadline with which we are due to leave the EU. However, even if MPs do approve an extension to Article 50, it also requires every single member state of the EU to agree to it. Other key dates are the 21st and 22nd of March, which is the last EU Council meeting before the UK is due to leave the EU. The EU Council meeting could hold further negotiations as it involves heads of state from all members of the EU. Potentially, the process of trying to avoid a no-deal outcome could run into the last week of March and the days before Brexit. So where does that leave us now? Well, I'm going to make two predictions. Firstly, I think it's highly unlikely that we'll be leaving the EU under a no-deal scenario. Secondly, I think it's highly likely that there will be an extension to that Article 50 deadline. Thank you very much for watching.